Welcome back, everybody. This is Abbey Road. So I did a live video, my first live video, the other day, uh, and I am featuring right now the basket weave quilt that inspired me by Rob Appel, who is the host of Man Sewing. So I kind of touched on the highlights of what I was doing with this quilt, which I've gotten a good bit of it done, but it's not completely finished. So I have some of the pieces here that I have laid out, as you can see. It's going to be a great quilt. I'm taking a lot of time to make sure that all of my stitching is perfect because I want this to be 100% right. It's going to be a rather large quilt. I think it's like 54 by 82. So in the last video, I didn't do any sewing, so I'm actually going to do that now. Again, just to recap, the binding that is in the middle of the quilt, the solid gray that's throughout the quilt, they are 1.5 inch strips that I have cut from a solid cotton. It takes 3 of those strips per square, and it takes 2 of the 2.5 inch fabric pieces that come in a jelly roll. That it's kind of a neat idea. So basically, I'm gonna do a little piecing. I'm gonna piece together some of uh, the whole strip, basically and then I'm gonna cut it down. And you should get with this measurement, each square should be about 7 3/4 inch wide. So what you'll do is you'll measure with your trusty measuring tool, which this is brand new. I haven't even taken it out of the plastic yet. I was using this guy, and these things are a lifesaver, which I showed you this in the last video, and it actually has dry erase markings on it, which help out a lot. That was a tip that I picked up from the Man Show, or Man Sewing. So yeah, you actually measure how long the piece is, like this, or how wide it is, and then you'll immediately flip it over and you'll cut your fabric that same length to create a square. So, with that being said, you want to make sure that you have everything that you need, have your strips and stuff together. I already have this all laid out for this one that I'm doing right now. There's going to be 3 of the 1.5 inch and then the 2.5 inch. So with this, you want to make your tension just a little. Well, I have my thread tension at a 2. That's what's good for my machine. I guess it just depends on what kind of machine you have. And you want to make sure that you're using a smaller thread length. So this automatically, because it's an automated machine, computerized machine, it defaults to 2.5. So I'm going to drop it down to a 2. So the way this works, and I've had fantastic results about this. You always want to keep your, oh, look at me. You want to keep the weighted fabric on the bottom so that your teeth can pull the weight along. But we're going to be sewing this in, try to keep it in one direction. So you start out by sewing the 2.5 inch on top of your 1.5 inch, and that'll be the only time you do it for each stripping that you piece together. So the first, you start out with your printed fabric or your bigger 2.5 inch piece on top, and then consequently going forward it will be on the bottom. So you just make sure, and this is going to be done with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, so that's fairly standard. All right, so we're going to get this started. I'm going to secure the stitch, back stitching, and you want to make sure that, I'm actually going to take off my shoe. You want to make sure that that you are going at a medium pace. This is a medium pace for me. I am also, I know you can't see because I don't have fancy videoing equipment, but I'm keeping a finger between my fabric so I can guide it and keep it in line and make sure that it is doing what it's supposed to do. So, and I've got little Rusty. I think you guys got to see Rusty in one of my previous videos, my little buddy. What is it? What is it, Rusty? What you doing, buddy? He's dying to get up in my lap right now. You can't get up here, baby. You gotta stay down there. So I'm keeping an eye on the what I consider to be the salvage side of the fabric. The I don't know what it's called, but it's see how it's cut. I call that the salvage side because to me it's the same as the salvage on bigger pieces of fabric. But I'm making sure that that is staying in line with the 1.5 inch piece. And it's not veering or going to the left or to the right. And I'm able to do that with my finger in between the two pieces of fabric. I'm using a cotton thread, just like that. I'm using a cotton thread. It's the all-purpose actually. So I don't know if the all-purpose is actually cotton or like a blend, a poly blend or what. But if you guys find that you want to make one of these, I have thoroughly enjoyed it. It's been a lot of fun. Fairly challenging, but I think the end result is going to be absolutely amazing. I can't wait to see the finished product. So, coming towards the end of this strip. I always slow down when I get to the end because I don't want to mess up. So I'm back stitching. I secured that stitch, and I'm anal. I always get rid of my thread now instead of having to do it later. So yeah. I know, Rusty, I know. So this is it. So what I will do is I will crease this over with the iron, and it will look very clean. So I'll be right back. Alright, so I'm back here ironing, and I'm laying the 1.5 inch strip down. Really wish, let's do this. There we go. Oh, well, there's my bathroom. I guess I could shut the door, huh? Okay. So we want this to be as clean as possible. I've got a pretty hot iron here. And if you can see, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the side of my iron and kind of set that seam up like this so I don't get any curl in the 2.5 inch fabric. Just like this. So that looks super, yeah, that looks good. I had the hardest time with this for some reason. I'm not quite sure why, but it just didn't make sense to me. And you just get that seam. So I'm going to move this down. Make sure there's not any puckering. I didn't get any puckering. Yeah, that looks good. flip it over. So you want to make sure that all of this seam is laying down flat. Yeah, that's great. All right, then we'll run over the back of it one more time. Well, for the first time, but over the piece yet again. All right. There we go. So let's get this guy set back up. One day I'll have equipment that I won't have to manually do myself. One day. Okay, so this is how it turned out. You see how clean there, I don't have any puckers or anything in that. That is good. Good stuff. Isn't that pretty? All right, so what I want to do is, because we need to be sewing in the same direction each time. So what I will do now is, you see how I was, the 2.5 inch fabric was on top. Going forward, for this 1.5 inch piece, the next 2.5 inch piece, and then the final 1.5 inch piece will all be sewed on top. I will be doing the sewing on top like that, and then I want to make sure that you are ironing each piece. So each time you sew a strip, you want to make sure that you set your seam. You can't sew this, I mean, I guess you technically could sew the whole strips, or all of the strips together, but you really want to make sure that you don't mess yourself up with these seams. I think these seams are so important to make sure that they are 100% right. So I will sew this guy. I'm going to drop my drop my needle. I've lined up my fabric to the cut, I'm calling it the salvage side, but oh shoot, I'm about to mess up. To make sure I have enough thread, top thread, it's very important. All right. Here we go. Always drop your presser foot, because you can't do anything without that being dropped. So I'm going to anchor that thread down. And medium pace, keeping a slight tension on your fabric. I'm not kidding you, these things really make a difference when it comes to how your seams come together, because this fabric, the weight of it is different from the weight of this fabric. So paying attention to those little details really helps with making sure that your fabric's not puckering. It is a little bit right here, but this was one of the first pieces that I pieced together. So you kind of learn as you go. That's okay. I'm not expecting this thing to be perfect, but I'm trying to learn as I go. That's why I'm sharing this stuff with you, so you will learn from my mistakes. There we go. But I do have to give a shout out to this machine. It's the Brother CE 1008. It really has done a great job for the stuff that I've made with it. I have really put it through the ringer. I feel primarily because I'm still learning what I'm doing, so I'm doing stuff that probably stresses this machine out, but it really does a good job. Of course, I'm not a paid spokesman or anything for Brother sewing machines or anything. I'm not paid for anything, but it's just a really good machine to start out on, I think. I think here in the next probably 6 months or so, I'm gonna jump up to a little bit bigger of a machine, something that I could sew denim with, and I don't feel like I know I can't sew denim with this machine. It's just not set up for it. It wouldn't handle it. So I'm going to speed up a little bit. And I don't have the program that I think a lot of people who try to share their experiences on YouTube and on social media and all that stuff. I don't have whatever it is. I'm having a hard time finding it, the editing software when you make videos. So I could kind of start this process out that I'm doing and then kind of speed it up and say, hey, I'll be right back, or watch this, I'll be done in just a second, or something like that. I'm having a hard time finding it. If you guys know a good one, please let me know. I don't have a whole lot of money to spend on that stuff, but it seems like what I have, the programs that I have researched are really expensive. And I didn't know if there was an alternative, a much cheaper alternative, because some of those editing programs are like $100, and I cannot afford that by any means. So I'm raising my presser foot. I set my stitch. I anchored that guy. Again, I got to get my little bits and bobs at the end, because it'll drive me crazy. And I think the reason why I'm so anal about that is because when I was first starting out, which I'm still just starting out, but the excess thread that I had, I wasn't paying attention. I just wasn't enough. Ooh, you can see that in the mirror behind me. That's not good. Ugh. I apologize for that. I'll try to block that. But I actually sewed that excess thread into what I was working on, and it messed me up. It was not good. So basically what I will do is I will do the same thing. I will set this the seam, and look, it already is coming out so clean. That's such a good feeling to me. So I will set this seam. I will add my second 2-inch piece of fabric, then I will put on the last 1.5-inch piece, and then I will cut this guy. And so I will be back.